just post in the question and answer section or in the chat. We will get to those questions soon. The reason why we do these sessions is to have the one-on-one so that you guys can ask questions and even we learn from that. So that's the goal, that's the aim to do that. Otherwise, we can record videos, which we don't like to do. We also will do that at some stage. Now, why we are doing this webinar is because affordability is the key. Even if you have the borrowing capacity with the rate hikes, it's dropping down, the holding costs are increasing, the inflation is going up, petrol prices are going up, there are wars happening. So to make money, it's important that we go and look into these high growth, high impact locations, which are still around, by the way. And it's not that if you just look into these locations, you can just put a filter of 550,000 on real estate and still get all these locations. But you need to filter through those. You need to know what to avoid. That's why we're gonna do this webinar here today. In case you don't know us, my name is Rahul Rangwani. I am from Fin Matters. I'm a mortgage broker. And with me, we have the expert on the topic, Ashish Malhotra from Auswide Buyers Agency, who runs a really nice buyers agency, and he's a very good buyers agent himself. So we will just be doing this session now. We have a few hundred people already here. We are just waiting to get a few more. The energy is going to be amazing today, and that's what we love. Ashish, how's everything been?
It is good, Rahul. Just I see the challenges. Not everyone has $1 million budget, and that's where different um, innovative assets and other lucrative markets come in. I've seen some commercial which is not part of today's presentation, but overall it's been amazing. The point is the overwhelm in the market. Everyone thinks they're expert after buying 2 or 3 properties. The point is you listen to those who have achieved what you're looking to achieve.
Well said. Now,
Otherwise,
because
there's
as
a
you
lot of
also
noise on
mentioned,
the
the borrowing
market.
capacity is a big factor. What I see that even you have the borrowing capacity for let's say 700-800,000 left, later down the line you need to pull out equity. So if you utilize all of it today and buy a property worth 700-800,000, there is a room to draw out equity. What is the point of the buying properties where you're making equity on that, but you can't use it because you have used all your borrowing capacity? That's where these suburbs come into the picture, where you can buy for 550, put a 10% deposit, get a loan of 490, 500,000, and then still have the borrowing capacity of 100, 200,000, which you can later down the line utilize. So, without further ado, Ashish, what do you think? Should we get started on this now?
Absolutely. I think we
Bring
are
it
four
on.
minutes. Well, we are 4 minutes over.
Yes, I can see where to buy 550K, what works in 2026 and what to avoid. All good, Ashish. Floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good evening, or just a little early good night. Now, if you've been told you can't build wealth on a 550K budget, tonight I'm going to prove that wrong. It is very important to find affordable markets and pockets. CoreLogic states that in last 50 years, the median house price to income ratios have gone from 3 times to 10 times. It's becoming very important to have someone with you or do the research such that you keep finding affordable markets. So tonight is not about theory, every market, every number, every recommendation. You'll see comes from real research, real deals, real data. Let's get into it. Awesome. So look, here's the roadmap. By end of tonight, you'll know exactly where to buy, what to avoid, why most investors get this completely wrong. Walk you through the structure and making sure this is practical and data driven, not just the sales pitch. And the research is multi-source and the recommendations are fairly current. So we're going to just a quick thank you to the research partners. I've not just Googled things, I've cross-referenced a good 12 to 14 most respected providers and resources. CoreLogic, hashtag being the most important one. Heron Todd White, Kotal, Matusik, Domain, Australian Bureau of Statistics, just to name few. Now, a quick legal note. Because I actually want you to act tonight, not just listen. I'm definitely required to tell you that isn't a personal financial advice. Um, but people who followed data over gut, they've done really well. But that's not just advice, it's observation. Second, before we talk and before we talk about where the money goes, we definitely acknowledge who the land belongs to. And again, my genuine respect and sincerity to the landowners, elders past and present. I love this quote. As said before, interest rates, before inflation, before everything we're navigating, it still holds. Property is still the most accessible wealth building vehicle available to everyday Australians. Tonight's about making sure you're accessing the right part of it. All right, so the landscape shift. In 1980, a house costed about 3 times your annual income. Today, it's 10 times. We've covered this a lot. It's not a property problem, it's a weight problem. People who bought 10 years ago are not smarter than you, they just started early. And as they say, the best time was to buy yesterday, the second best time is today. They also say that whoever has taken a decision on property today, someone who saw today and will take a decision tomorrow has already missed. Coming to the median price points, you can see every market, it's touching almost $1 million. And what I'm here to tell you is there's a very quiet wealth transfer that's happening. About 200,000 people have moved out of capital cities between 2020 and 2024. A lot of us, I included, when I started investing, we were told regional markets are not good markets. The stagnations are longer. The timing has to be quite right, I'd say. But again, all these people who moved, they didn't make the news, but their property purchases did. And that's why we've seen that wealth transfer in plain sight, while Sydney investors were watching auction clearance rates. In the inner west, the smart money was already moving towards Townsville, Adelaide, regional Queensland, Perth. Tonight, we'll follow the money and people. Again, just another aspect, Adelaide, Brisbane, and Perth combined have absorbed more interstate migrants in 2024 than any other prior 5-year period. What I'm talking today is stats, but they're not necessarily reflective of what's going to happen. I'm just being extra cautious around what we're doing as well. Coming to capital flow, again, when 60 to 70% of buyers in Adelaide and Queensland are coming from New South Wales and Victoria, that tells you something. The locals didn't move, the smart investors did. Search volumes for Adelaide and regional Queensland on real estate have gone up 40% year on year. That's footprints, not speculation. You can actually follow them before they turn into a stampede. The REA Group reports that the interstate investment activity through buyers agents, it's 60 to 70% of the purchases that come from New South Wales and Victoria. So this has led to a rise of buyers agents as well, because the markets have gone really competitive, be it 2021 in Adelaide, 2023 in Perth, 2023 and 4 in Queensland. I know I've got 3 full-time staff just searching for opportunities, and even then it becomes a struggle at times. That's where sometimes the search volumes really helps as to how they're moving. Again, moving on to the rental demand, Sydney's rental vacancy is 1.6%, Adelaide is 0.3%. Means for every 1,000 rental properties in Adelaide, only 3 are sitting empty. Perth under 1%. Regional Queensland rents have gone up 18% in 2 years' time. So that's saying a 500K property approximately has gone up to $600 a week. If you've owned a rental property in these markets right now, how do you feel? Just message. I'm sure a lot of you have bought. Just between 1 and 10, you can give your confidence factor. This is purely for those who have bought. Me included, of course. I'd say just message what your confidence factor is. I bought in Perth. I definitely have got good growth, and that's fairly how the investors have felt in last about 5-6 years. We're moving to the price growth again. Just in 2025, Perth has went up by nearly 17%, Adelaide by 9%. Amazing. Look, keep messaging, keep adding the messages. You can message to everyone as well. I know a lot of you are messaging to hosts and
It's
panelists.
allowing the. I don't think it's allowing the option for the everyone here. It's just coming to the host and panelist.
Okay.
Anyhow, it's fine.
Anyways, all right. I do apologize for that.
All
Now,
good. Yes, you said a really nice thing about the timing in the market. It also means that we have to be be conscious of the time we have today, so we have to keep moving fast. Let's get to the suburbs. Everyone is just waiting for that. Let's get the locations.
well, that's where the key is, right? That's where I'm getting the audience to first listen.
Yeah, which is
Um,
important. Like you should know why you are buying in these locations. Because if someone tells me you can buy in Victoria, Melbourne, or you can buy in regional, I would obviously think, yeah, let's buy in Melbourne. But that's the
Absolutely.
understanding of these data factors that why regional might be a better choice sometimes.
And look, I've heard a lot of times most people think expensive equals better investment. The data says actually opposite, especially looking at places like Townsville, which have nearly doubled in since 2020. The point is, what's the next Townsville? And I've also heard that people say, prior to 2020 was a different market. Anyways, we'll cover that as well. The infrastructure pipelines, the governments don't lie with the infrastructure, spend $31 billion on the inland rail project. We're talking 17 billion on the cross river rail project. And that's where the money goes. The property prices follow because there's jobs created while the infrastructure is being built, and then the jobs created after it has been built. So both things matter equally. Infrastructure is the most reliable indicator in property, roads, rail, hospital, universities. Wherever these land population follows, wherever population follows, property grows. Again, it's just ideal to follow pipelines. At some places like Sydney, for example, you see infrastructure-led growth as well. And so there's few projects that I've listed already in different pockets and markets. Some of these have formed the reasons of our purchases as well. Um, a lot of people say we'd like to or love to follow data, and that's where it gets confusing. Everyone has got their own point of view, and that's where the pattern recognition comes in. Looking at the data sources, I've just picked two data sources. One is Heron Todd White, second is hashtag higher than average growth. Um, it gets confusing. Except for one market, there's no market where the point of view matches. Now, this is where the confusion comes in. And look, I have prepared something to go through. This taken a bit of time to go through the markets. Now, this is just New South Wales, and this is the growth. When it's negative, it's the negative growth. And when it's slowing down, it's actually the growth slowing down. This is not the median price. As you can see, Sydney and Melbourne are pretty much in line, right? Now, this is also last 15 years. I've actually collated last 30 years worth of data across all markets, both in terms of annual growth and the median price. Now, as you can see, this is 30 years. We saw 2000 boom, and then we saw 2013-14 boom. This is where the median drops as well. Now, this is just to give you an indication how different markets are growing. Now, while the median's making a difference here, Melbourne is pretty much following Sydney at any given point in time, both in terms of growth and in terms of median, which means whenever Sydney is growing, Melbourne has grown. A good example of how my mentor once said history always repeats itself. It's actually true. And that's why it's important you recognize what has happened in the past in order to identify which markets you should exit at this point. Looking at Brisbane, Brisbane has actually gone separate. I'll remove Melbourne just because it's following the same pattern. If you see, except for 2020, most times Brisbane has either stagnated when Sydney has grown or Brisbane has grown when Sydney has dropped or slowed down. Drop means only if it goes negative growth. Otherwise, it's a slow growth or a stagnancy. Looking at the median prices, Brisbane market has actually never dropped in value. So this is again good to identify which markets have dropped in value. Looking at Adelaide, now Adelaide is following Brisbane. Historically, Adelaide Hall also has never gone down in value. Why this is important? Because now we are going to see markets that have actually dropped in value. If you would have entered, let's go to median price, and I'll compare just Perth and Brisbane, for example. If you would have bought back in 2010 and 11 in Perth, you actually would have made a loss of 30% and you would have done nothing for about 10 or 11 years. This is where people make a mistake. Anytime you would have bought, by the way, if you see the growth in Perth at that point, 26% in 2006 and 35% in 2007. If you would have been in those markets, even in 1 year, you would have made a fortune. But then this is not a drop. It is actually a drop in growth from 35 to 28. This is what's called deceleration. And then it's negative 4%. Would you mind if your property has doubled in value and it drops by 4%? Absolutely not. But this is the problem. When it grows really fast, it drops really, and the stagnancy periods are longer as well. This is what we need to avoid. And this is what's
It's really
happening in the
interesting.
market at this point. Yeah. So we may see another growth horizon, a short growth horizon, but it may drop in value as well. Coming to Darwin and Hobart, again, it's important to see that Darwin has actually gone negative also. Yeah. So Darwin has also gone negative in the past, and that's where you sometimes have to be cautious and careful because those markets that have gone negative in the past can go negative again. Hobart, again, very similar. When you look at median prices, Hobart has actually dropped in last few years, which actually forms a good market because if you would have seen Hobart itself, it actually went up really well from 2007 to pretty much up till 2021. Hobart then, to my understanding, actually followed Melbourne to some extent. Melbourne has started to go up now, and Hobart in last 1 year has actually given positive returns. It's just identifying those markets and also understanding how the supply is in that market. Now, this is something that it took me about 2 hours to collate and prepare this, thanks to AI again. But then again, I'll skip this. I think we've discussed on this enough. The point was to help you understand how the markets traverse at different points in time. There's few more things that I would really love to explain. Just allow a moment. Sorry, I have to, hide the presenter view. All right. So this is another aspect which a lot of us don't understand. When I say us, look, I'm always included. Again, we've seen the data sources, same data, same month, different conclusions. It's not a mistake. It's just the nature of property research. Pattern recognition isn't something you can download. It is something you earn. One market, one cycle, one deal at a time. You've seen the landscape. Now let's talk about, again, this, as you can see, last 30 years growth. It also tells you how much time it takes for the market to double. Hobart, Darwin, the cycles are longer, right? This is up till 2025. Sydney and Melbourne, the cycles go smaller. Brisbane and Adelaide, the cycles go smaller. Now, I've added a little bit of a twist. What would have happened to these numbers if we would have taken the same horizon of 30 years back in 2020? This is the example for you. And this is where the markets can drastically change in just 5 years' time when you see a boom.
How does that like reflect now into 2026 now? Like where are the markets that we should be looking into?
Yeah. So I see where you want to go from here. But again,
We are
I
getting
look
questions as well, and we just want to. I'm already seeing a
amazing.
few questions coming in, so we need to just wrap it up a
Understood.
little bit faster. And
Look,
I'm just going to speak for the people here. Let's
once
just get the suburbs.
yeah, once we have the basics cleared, I don't think we'll take more time in suburbs
Yeah.
because
No, this
then
is fair. Like
then
this is,
we know
it's important to
the
understand these things
concepts.
for sure.
Yes, we know the concepts that we're looking at. But the point here is Brisbane, for example, if you would have taken the numbers and you know that it doubles in 13 years and the average growth is 5.5%, with the growth Brisbane has seen in last just 6 years or 5 years rather, now the average growth is stacking up at 8.10%. But overall, these markets are not that bad. It's just even
Hmm.
Hobart is giving you 5.5 to
Yeah.
6% over a period of time. And once Hobart goes through the boom cycle again, this 5% can improve to 6 or 7% again. So that's something that you should look at. All right.
There you go. 25 minutes in, we are on the topic. Let's get started.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about where to put your money. Um, I know you've been patiently absorbing the information. I know you want answers. Now let's go from analysis to action. All right. Before that, the buying criteria. I've seen a lot of comments where people say you can buy in Lakimba. You have to be cautious and careful. Absolutely, we have to be. Cheap is not a strategy. Cheap with purpose.
So when you say
That's a
Lakemba, you mean
strategy.
the apartments and the units?
Yes. So we're
Yes.
going to cover that as well.
Yeah,
More
we have a question
importantly,
about that as
what
well.
to avoid.
But yeah, let's just, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Look,
got this
every
question
market
from.
recommendation tonight past certain buying criteria filter. It isn't a list of cheap suburbs. It's a suburbs where, cheap meets some sort of fundamentals. Like I have buyers buying at, like I've got tradies buying at 350 or 400K properties. Sometimes we have to let go of certain fundamentals, but I'm very clear when I work with them that we have to let go. At this point, we're buying a 350K property. I'll give you explanation where we are buying and why. Um, all right, confidence. This is the most important aspect when you look at numbers and look at data because you will have areas giving you all rock solid numbers. However, they'll only have one or two sales in a year. So for me, I'll open up markets where I can see 10 or 15 sales in a year. I've seen that in Lockyer Valley in Queensland, where in 2023 we started buying properties around 420. Right now they're sitting at 800 a pop. I bought a commercial site there where we are expecting a rental of $650,000 a year. Anyways, coming to growth, long term, medium term, and short term, the risk, a low risk, a medium risk, high risk. We also look at equity play between 2 and 5 years because a lot of people want to take the money out and go to the next one. We look at spots, generally four types. Cold spots, I'll not even cover it. Warm, hot, and then transitioning from warm to hot. And yes, now you can pick that, but not from DSR. Affordability is another factor. Supply, very important. Hold periods, and then price and growth sensitivity. Growth is from population and from a value perspective, and price sensitivity from 1, 3, 5, and 10-year changes. All right. So I'll move on to the first market. Now, Victoria.
Yeah.
Look, it's a contrarian play of the decade, and most people are still sleeping on it. I'm telling you, most markets in last 2 to 3 years or 1 to 3 years have given 10 to 30% already. Horsham, Traralgon, Shepparton, Mildura, they're not glamorous names, but then the glamorous names don't generate 7% passive yield. Latrobe Valley alone has three of the best sub 500K purchases. And I've briefly explained already the long-term, medium term, and short-term and risk ratings. But this is, I've tried to cover those ratings as well. And this time frame is to generate some equity. So look, 2 years can be 3 years. These are guesstimates, by the way. But why long term? Because these are long term plays. Horsham gives you 6% yield. It has grown in value. That Latrobe Valley is my favorite. We've bought properties around 550 to 600 there that have grown by a good 10-15% already in last 1 year. Shepparton, I know some buyers, big buying agencies, they've been buying since last 3 years almost now. I'm very careful where I'm buying around Shepparton, but then you've got Benalla is another town I haven't covered there, but that's coming as a warm spot transitioning to a hot spot because I think there's an outflow from Shepparton at this point in Benalla. Mildura and Redcliffe. Redcliffe's the favorite market. Mildura has a lot of agriculture, and that's again, once you start to buy, you'll start to find reasons of the purchases in those areas too, whereby you start to look at the markets of employment, and that's where you'll start to explore. Mildura is a big agriculture market, by the way. The yields of rock solid in last 3-4 years. Mildura has given a very decent growth, but now the focus is shifting to the nearby towns. So, anyways, Craigieburn, it's hot favorite, and a lot of people have bought there. And look, I can tell you from our own purchases, what happened was when we started targeting this market back around end of 2024, we were able to negotiate $15,000 to $30,000 on the purchases. And then this market has gone up by a good 8 to 10%. I have a premium relationship banker from CBA, might be on the, I think, registered as well. We bought his property for 630. It's valued at 720 already, and that's a valuation that has come for him. And he's a banker himself. So coming to where I've written you now.
Have going for these locations now, like Horsham and Craigieburn. Are they still a buy? Are they still under 550 for houses, or is it units?
Look, if you see you, I've just marked as units. I feel there's the only thing now that you can afford there is a unit. I still see a lot of people shy away from units and those smaller 2-bedroom units. I've bought those in Adelaide for clients. This is back in 2021 when people were coming with a budget of 180 to 250. And when I started buying in Adelaide, those 220K units right next to the city are now sitting at 440 to 450K. The rentals have gone up. They have also doubled. They're older units, they're small villas. The strata is very low, 600 to 800 a year. That's nothing. So
yeah,
I think we miss out on what we are buying and why we are buying. So again, okay, by the way, Latrobe region I was talking, hospital, government offices, insurance sectors, there's a TAFE, it's a retail hub. Traralgon has a big hospital. I've had some doctors buy there. I bought a block of units for $700,000, returning $56,000 rent, 8% gross. So people are spending money. Shepparton is a food processing, again, dairy, agriculture, health, hospital, and education. There's a university there as well. Mildura is again agriculture, famous for grapes, almonds. It's a 1 billion plus industry, base hospital. And in some of these areas, you also have RAF bases, your Royal Australian Air Force bases. Coming to Wodonga, again a good market, but it's been growing for now almost 1 or 2 years. I don't think you've lost the boat there. Equally, we were buying around Albury as well. Why? Because it's a border market. For people who wanted to diversify into New South Wales because of land tax, we were buying around Albury. Otherwise, we were jumping on Wodonga. Again, put your questions, please. I know I'm taking time
Please get the questions
here.
in as soon as you think of something, because we will be covering most of them and it will be in the order of which one is posted first. We have some questions already in, so please keep posting. Yes, Ashish, please go on.
Yeah, and
so like Ballarat, these are houses are still available under 550 for
yes,
these.
and
Horsham and everything is still under 550. I know few people who have bought in Mildura, Shepparton, anything that they can buy nearby, not just one. They have bought multiple properties. They're like they are a crack addict. I don't know why, but and some of them are attending in that, and they would be kind of smirking when I mention this. But this is what I see with my clients as well, that they, like, after they buy in Shepparton, after that, the nearby location of Tharugna will be Sorry, just give me 1 second. Tharugna will be the next one, and whatever the nearby locations are, they will just jump to that. Is it Tharugna? No, wait. Sorry, Tatura and other bad locations nearby Shepparton. So I keep contracts, seeing contracts. That's what I have seen. That, oh yeah, this is in Shepparton, similar postcode. Now these next locations which are close to that, they are there. That's where people start buying.
Yes, look, my hot favorite is Kolak at the moment. It's a hidden favorite. I've been buying there for now almost a year. We initially bought properties for 420, 430. They're renting for 450 to 480 a week. They're now priced at 510 to 540.
Mm-hmm.
There's some newer properties there as well. I actually saw some land and builds there as well. I deliberately call it land and build because I don't look at packages. But there's still some areas where, you know what, I'll give you an area where you can make $100,000 on a spend of 850. I've got 10 clients there already, but that I'll do
850
it
or
at the
550?
very end. 850. That's a bigger budget, but you can make 100,000.
We will
Anyways,
do a
coming
different
back.
webinar for that. That's just
Wodonga,
550.
yes. Wodonga, we've missed the boat. Bendigo, we've missed the boat. So only units. Ballarat and Colac, there's still options available. Colac's a very lifestyle and stable regional center. When you are coming back from Geelong and the Great Ocean Road, sorry, from Great Ocean Road towards Geelong or City, Colac becomes a major center. You know what? Colac has a very decent commercial as well. It is my hot favorite for commercial. Traralgon, Morwell, Warragul in that pocket. It's also my hot favorite for commercial, especially Warragul. We've bought a commercial property there as well, an office space for just $660,000, returning $39,000 in rent net.
More
Um,
than Ronaldo. Like, is that like properly developed, or is it like one more developed than the other? Because these
you
are
know
like
what?
very small suburbs. So
It's
what is
very developed. It has no space at all. And
which
there's a
one?
bad
More
story
Morwell
as
or
well.
Ronaldo?
By the way,
More
there's a
Morwell or
bad
Ronaldo?
story. Traralgon is the big spot there, like a major town. Mo and Morwell are on the way. By the way, I have a team member who bought in Morwell in 2021, and he engaged a buyer's agent who said, you know what, you should buy here because I'm also buying, and there's because of Commonwealth Games, it'll move up. So I think in the hindsight, of course, but we were exiting from Victoria in 2021. It was a wrong move for few reasons. Number one, the market peaking out. Number two, it's a low socioeconomic market. Number three, the Commonwealth Games were never an approved project. So all the projects that I've listed today, they are not in the air. They are all approved. Government is putting money into it, and some have already started. So none of those projects is in the air, by the way. Now coming back, Mildura has grown by 19%, Wodonga 9.3% in last year. Traralgon has gone up by 9%. Mo and Morwell has gone up by 8% already. You're still not late to the boat. So I'm now getting clients who want to buy two or three pretty much in a succession. All right, I'll move from Victoria, by the way. Just Victoria has issues.
Before you do, I also say that my expectation was that you will be doing 4 or 5 locations, and that will cover all of Australia. And I see 9 locations just in Victoria. That's quite impressive to see that. And that
Look,
also brings up some questions. That also brings up some questions which are in the chat, which I would also like to raise. Someone has asked, if we come to you for BA services, Ashish, do you want to take that question?
let's
Let's
take
just take this
questions
one
at the
now because
very
I
end.
think this kind of
But
makes sense. We need to
yeah,
ask these questions.
I'm telling you, I'm genuinely sharing this. I believe in sharing. I want everyone to make money. You make money and then you invest in our development projects.
Let me
I
read the
think
question first because people are not able to read this question, so you know what they are like missing. So the context is that there is someone who has asked anonymously, if we come to you for PS services, Ashish, hope these suburbs will not change because we want to see these suburbs as explained. For us to come to you is for your expertise in pre-market access and tie-ups. Hope we are clear. Very strict warning, very demanding, but let's just honor and respect that. And I want you to answer that. Are you buying in this location or is this just like something which has already been for you?
every location that I've listed, I've either bought now or a year back, right? I might have moved from some locations, but I'm a very conservative
Yeah.
investor and that reflects in our purchases. Perth, I exited the market mid 2025. Um, Adelaide, I exited the market mid 2024. The moment market gives 70, 80%, and the 30-year chart that I showed you, Adelaide never went up by 100% in last 35 years. So I'm scared, just being very honest, right? But so I exit the markets fairly early and I start to find opportunities. But yes, all these markets I've bought already for clients. They've made money also. Coming back. So Look, Victoria has issues. Number one, people raise land tax. Land tax, the threshold has temporarily gone down from $300,000 to $50,000. That adds $975 into your kitty, which is nothing in a year. Second, the compliance checks on plumbing and gas, that adds about 1,000 to 1,500 in a year again. Third, the government is very landlord friendly. Tenant friendly. And yes, they are. I honestly don't like their attitude. But look, it shouldn't deter a good investor to invest in a few opportunities. I bought 7 at the peak of market, which was 2022, and I've now sold 4 out of that, and I bought 2 more in Victoria. So again, when you have to make money, you don't have to be worried about that. You just foresee certain things and then get into the markets while they're tight. All right, I'll move from Victoria. I think I've spent enough time. There's a lot of markets, and you'll see some empty markets as well. But before that, New South Wales. Now, there's been some markets, right? So Narromine has given 8% last year. Dubbo has given 7% last year. The Inland Rail project has a station coming up in Narromine that connects with Parks. I haven't mentioned Parks. Parks has a lot of commercial activity happening. It has also grown in last 1 year. I'm a little bit scared in buying in Parks. I do believe in Orange Dubbo because in Dubbo, inside the news, Batlas and Alams have acquired a lot of land there. I know because I did door knocking, and there's one big developer out there. I don't want to name them. You're gonna see a lot of land sales happening in next 3 to 5 years. So that's Dubbo. There is no land at the moment that is now free because I wanted to acquire something for my investors as well. Anyways, coming back. So look, Narromine is agriculture economy. It's a very limited liquidity, but you know what? You can buy something for 420, 430, renting for 470, 480 a week. These opportunities are getting extinct. Dubbo is tough market now to get in. Orange has already the trains gone past the station. Hambert, you might be lucky still to get in. Wagga Wagga already gone. I think most markets in New South Wales, they're not under 500 anymore. And I haven't named any town randomly. These are major towns only. Again, hot spotting flags, Tamworth with 4% investor yields and solid regional fundamentals.
But what about the crime, Tamworth? What about the community?
Yes, so there are particular streets. There are particular streets which I'd be very, very careful of. I won't buy there at all. But look, bear in mind one thing. When you are knowingly buying in certain locations, knowing that they are rough has no relationship to growth. Mount Druitt has doubled in value. Gosnells has more than doubled in value. Elizabeth has doubled in value. The only thing is you're exposing yourself to certain risks. Now we're talking low socioeconomic pockets. You don't have many options. I have a client with a budget of $350,000. We can't be choosy. So I have to let go of certain fundamentals.
Yeah, we have to admit that price points are moving up quickly. Like to be demanding at 550, 500 is also a thing. You need to be strategic about that. Where you are getting in the market, knowingly that you're going there for capital growth. You will personally may not live in that house or location. You may not want that, but the tenants, some people are still preferring these locations. That's what they can afford. So you can get a lot of capital growth in these locations. Like I bought an Albury long, like before that anyone knew about that. I bought it for 350. Now it's sitting at 7, somewhere about 7-ish in 2 years. So that is the growth that you can get in these locations if you do it right. But is it a tough suburb? Are there longer vacancy periods? Yes, I'm not going to deny that. But the capital growth kind of in this case compensates that for me. And that's a strategy. That's what I got into that knowing. So we can't be too choosy in these houses. I do understand that. But then we can still be very selective in which streets to buy, which ones to avoid, and just do a little bit more research. Make the calls to real estate agents. Hey, where is the nearby community housing around this house where I'm buying? Is it immediate next door? Yes. Cross off the list. If not, then maybe you can consider that. So my approach would be that going into that. Look, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ashish.
That's absolutely right. Paid access of Cotality these days lets you see the owner information next to your property, so you can see if it's a state housing commission owned home. South Australia has a register that's maintained in local, I think, council or local housing commission area, which you can actually ask for to see where the local housing commission homes are. Look, there's two surprises here. One is Broken Hill. It's a, I used to think it's a pure yield play, but it's now growing. Broken Hill has actually gone up in value in last 1 year also. Um, I've added older units in smaller complexes. Look, if you still can't convince yourself to go regional, um, I like some areas and cheaper units. Like I like Maze Hill, smaller units right next to Parramatta, but it's not oversupply. Now, I'm not the best judge here because I like it because I've stayed in the area. There is hardly any apartment market where you can get in a bit cheaper. Schofields I really liked because initially those two-bedders were available for about 420 to 450. Right now everything's sitting at 650 to 670. I like Norwest when the off-the-plan apartments were there, but now it's oversupply because there's like 15, 20-story building everywhere. People have made money there as well. They bought for 750 to 850 and now selling for 1.1 to 1.2 million. So not every market has been okay, double bay, neutral bay, or those older apartments, especially 4 to 8, because people can knock them down or bought as a
Hmm.
combined unit and actually build on top. So I like those pockets, but right now nothing's cheaper than 550 to 650 in those markets also.
Let's
Um,
focus on 550 600
Yep.
market since
I'll
you
move on from New South Wales. I think we've discussed enough.
so that's all in
Um,
New South Wales, right? What about Armidale on all these locations? Are they still a buy? 550 is the price point, or is it not?
Armidale, look, it's not a bad economy. We haven't been buying, so I haven't added. I'm again when I see the recommendations, I don't see a long-term hold there, or the growth can be there, can't be there. I can't even see Ripple at this point. My favorite hotspot, even though it's not 550, is Hunter Valley. 850 to a million 50. Wollongong and around Dapto and all. I bought some houses around 680 to 720. There's no way you can buy, and I'm just talking 1.5 year back. So that's for clients again. I haven't bought. I only have a development site in New South Wales. So all right, moving on. So look, Queensland and regional Queensland is hot favorite for everyone. I don't like mining markets or pure mining markets. So Gladstone, I'm a little bit concerned, but it's still not as bad as a market. As opposed to if you would have looked at Moranbah, I don't know if anyone has heard the story in Moranbah. There was a couple who bought 8 properties and the properties doubled in value pretty much in 2, 3 years, and they were minting money because 800K house was renting for 1500 a week. The rates were pretty low, or even if they were more, they were making more money. And Moranbah overnight, their properties literally dropped by 75%. They had to declare bankruptcy. Now, this is just one couple I know because I think, and stress tests the relationships as well. I believe they got separated. The wife became a mindset coach, especially if you've gone through all of this. So I'm very concerned about one-legged horses or single economic factor driven markets. But here, Bundaberg, Mackay, Cairns, Toowoomba, and Gympie are not those markets. So
Still into 550 range? Oh, it's all units.
all units. Queensland is just very tough market, and all recommendations that have come in Queensland, it's just tough. I don't like mining markets at all. And
Hmm.
I won't buy in these areas even, and I won't recommend clients either. Look, it's better to be safe than sorry. I believe from others' perspective, we've already taken a lot of risk by getting into regional markets. But you know what? I suggest you go to regional markets. Bowral, which is like there's even a townhouse is 1.3, 1.4 million. I go for every year for a running festival to Mudgee. I People have bought 10 years back for 600-ish, 300-ish, 400-ish. Right now, those properties are 800 to $1 million.
Hmm.
There's nothing cheap. So, all right, I'll move on from Queensland. And
Yeah, before you move, I'll
unfortunately,
just also remind everyone to just start posting questions. We have a lot of questions here. So please rush in with your questions. If you think of any question while you're listening, just post it straight away because we'll be covering in the end. And we will start from the top. So if you have any questions, please post straight away.
all right, Western Australia, again, nothing available. It's very tough. Look, what you can target is some units, those two-bedder, three-bedder units. But Western Australia and Queensland, to my understanding, majority of the markets, and hashtag actually says 94% of the markets at this point in Western Australia and Queensland, they've just grown substantially. You should be careful where you put your money. I know a lot of buyers agents are still buying there. As I've said, I'm very cautious investor. I'd rather be safe than sorry. I believe it's time to exit in these locations. We've started asking our clients if they are looking to free up cash, pay off the loans on their owner-occupier properties. This is the time.
Hmm.
Um, all right, I'll move
That's a
on.
good point about units that you mentioned that, after all, it's a scarcity. So if the houses are not there, if they are not affordable, people will move to units. That's what happened in Brisbane. That's what happened in Gold Coast. Now Western Australia is showing the same similar type of scarcity, which is it's gonna go to units in Western Australia soon. It's already has. We already see people buying units in Western Australia because that's what they can afford, and owner occupiers are also buying these things. So it's mostly owner occupiers who are getting to that, and investors, it's a small segment for investors still because they are still trying to get houses. But again, it's a good thing because it's mostly an owner occupier dominated area.
And look, yes, it is, and you will still see agents telling you there's fair bit of demand, and there is from owner occupiers. Oh, so what has happened?
Spelling of Launceston and my inner. Uh,
I actually missed this, but I will add anyway. So look, I'll skip Western Australia. I do apologize. The slide has not been updated, but look, actually, I have missed two things. My favorite market is South Australia. So
yes,
yes, I've actually missed the entire slide. I do apologize for that. I'll
I'm not
talk
sure if
about
David
the.
is registered or not.
I actually added it here. Here,
Yeah.
it's here. I think I might have missed it. Sorry. So okay, now I haven't added much, but it because it is all medium term, medium risk, they're transitioning from warm to hot spots. I've added smaller units because units generally follow property prices. Sometimes they are late. I do believe units have already grown, but they are markets that you can get into. Now, our favorite triangle, the Gulf Triangle, is Whyalla, Mount, Port Augusta, and Port Pirie. Port Pirie is pure lead play. It's a smaller town, but it's only 2 hours. It has the largest smelter, world's largest smelter there. There's a lot of port operations and agribusiness there. Um, Port Pirie is the cheapest market. Look, as a disclaimer, your growth may slow down. You may not see these markets double in value in 4 5 years, but maybe 12 to 15 years. Still not bad. These are slow markets. Port Augusta, 40% of the jobs are government jobs. There's a RAF base there as well. There's again, it's an Indian Pacific Rail renewable energy projects, and just if you follow renewable energy projects, you'll see a lot of money moving into those areas.
So these are
Vyala,
new projects which are coming up, which are approved, or is it just something in talks, or is it
no,
already
they're
there?
existing projects that are running already in those pockets.
So how is the growth going to happen if they're already there? Then jobs are already created, right? If there are new projects coming, if there's more migration happening, that's what will drive the demand prices up. Is there anything new that's coming, or is it like existing already, like it's ongoing operations?
So it's ongoing operations. There's nothing that I have said that is not proposed. So not approved or not proposed. So these projects are already running. Same way, Even Whyalla, right? Whyalla has a big hospital. There's shipbuilding pipeline in Whyalla. There's Steelworks, which is the largest employer in Whyalla, and it's not going anywhere. It's stable steel manufacturing. So it's Port Pirie is a bit small, but it's only 2 hours from Adelaide, and that's where we bank on because it's also the first stop when you go to Port Augusta or Whyalla. Believe or not, Port Lincoln I've added, but then I think you've missed the boat there as well. Port Lincoln is the biggest seafood capital, agriculture and tourism. While Port Lincoln is like in the middle of nowhere, it's way farther than Adelaide, but it's costlier also. There are a lot of apartments in these pockets as well. But again, some of the areas, apartments become a tourism play, but nothing else.
Okay.
Mount
Yeah.
Gambier again is a look. I think it's gone very costly. I know a developer who has 18 years worth of projects, and one of the biggest project is in Mount Gambier. A lot of community people have done subdivisions in Mount Gambier. It's a good market, but I believe we've missed the boat in Mount Gambier. So um, that's, but again, yes, we are buying all those 350 to 420K purchases happens in South Australia. I bought a dual occupancy for someone for 220, returning $450 a week in rent in Whyalla. That was a pure cash flow play, nothing else. I told the client we're just purely chasing cash flow.
It's a good
I'm
cash flow play,
talking
but then
about
again, Viola's on the growth now. If you see, even look at the last 12 months, I think it's gone up, what, 10, 12%, I think.
spot on. It has grown well, and Port Pirie also is on the verge of growth. That market has not moved, I think 30-40% in last 13 years. I believe that ripple is now just leading Port Pirie to move. Now, the thing is, you can't have an imbalance. Like, you can't have a state going from 350K price to 800K, and the regionals that were sitting at 120 won't go to 300. And that's the thing we need to, because there's always a ratio of increase. Like, yes, you may not see the regionals moving at 500, but from a percentage increase perspective, you'll see a decent 70-80% return in a very short time frame. But then the stagnancy
Mhm.
periods would be longer. And I'm chasing sometimes such properties for single moms and dads who can't borrow much, can't buy anywhere. Look, I'll move quickly. Tasmania, Hobart and Launceston, you get in now. The market is so tight. There are multiple offers on the property. They've put a clause of even buyer's agents need to have a license there, so they've made it tough to buy there, and still the buyer's agents are buying left, right, and said we are missing out on opportunities there. If you can buy something, don't worry about anything within 35 to 50 minutes of Hobart. Launceston, major tourism destinations, buy now. It's hard. It's 5% yields. Sometimes you can even look at dual occupancies. So areas like I'll name the areas. Areas like, so anything around Hobart, Risdon Vale has newer properties, mostly 3 bedrooms. These are 1960s, 70s built homes. So you have to go past your notions if you have to be in this market. I can't insist enough. You have to buy older properties, bigger lots. You can add secondary dwellings. Um, and the market has already moved 10% in last 1 year. So anything around Hobart, Norfolk Island is another hidden spot. Launceston, Burnie, Devonport, Georgetown, Latrobe, you get in now. It's becoming Perth in 2021. Sorry, Adelaide in 2021, Perth in 2022, and that's how it's becoming. I do apologize, I haven't written any numbers here, but I'm
Yeah.
now trying to find out more markets, but then we're struggling already in certain pockets. So yes, it's my hot favorite location. Even we've deviated our attention from Melbourne into Hobart in Tasmania. It's a very small market.
I will just go a little bit rogue. I know you may be still buying there, or maybe you're not disclosing all the locations, but I'm seeing locations people buying in Latrobe where for similar price points, 550, 600, 600-ish, around that. In Tasmania, not in Victoria, the Latrobe in those suburbs. You
Yeah,
might
yeah.
be, uh, yeah, saving it for your clients, or maybe just, not disclosing all the suburbs, but I see that happening a lot in that location?
Look, the point is, if you are a decision maker and it helps you, take that decision and buy. And if you need that support, yes, we are there. But then if you are a DIY investor, look, everyone adds value. You can consider it added value, but at least take a decision. And I think that's
So
what counts. It's
about
going
the
to be a
Tasmanian.
struggle. I was getting clients back in 2021, 2, 3, 4, just because people were priced out of those markets. You wait for 6 to 8 months, you'll be priced out of Tasmania, any location.
That is why, like, when you look at these locations, it's faster to save the deposit for a 550, 500 price point, or maybe equity that you have. You don't have to wait longer. The longer you wait, that by the time that market has moved 40, 50,000. So this is the key why you should buy these locations where this price point is. Because I just think in terms of finance, I don't like you guys are there to find out capital growth, rental yield, XYZ. But in terms of finance, that's where I see people missing out that I want to buy 700,000, 800,000, but I need 15, 20,000 to save more to get to that price point. By the time that suburb has gone up a 50, 100,000. So what's the point of this? So you just keep chasing your own tail. And this is like, gets you in the market straight away, as
Look,
long as you're careful to buy.
yeah, I'll say I love saying that. So Tasmania is the tortoise of Australian property. It's slow, it's steady, it's quietly building wealth for those who are paying attention.
Did you cover all the suburbs of Tasmania in this?
I have pretty much, yes.
Okay.
It's yeah, just Hobart is already getting pretty costly.
Yeah.
The
Before we
Spirit
get
of
to the question,
Tasmania terminal, Bell Bay Industrial Port, the UTAS campus there. It is a lot to Tasmania than what we see from here.
hmm.
Right.
Uh,
Um, let's move
but
on. What
just one second,
to,
I'll just some people
please?
who just joined. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make it interesting for the people who are already there and the new ones as well. What I want you to do, just go to the states, the four ones, and I want you to pick your favorite from those suburbs that you mentioned and your least favorite, so that we know like what's going on. I'm gonna be a little cheeky here and then see where exactly is the good stuff in this list. So is that okay with you, Ashish?
You want me to pick the suburbs, is it?
All the locations where you mentioned, like 10 suburbs, 9 suburbs, which is your favorite area and which is your least favorite area, so we know where to buy. And
Look,
then
I'll
this will
talk
also do a
state.
little bit of recap for all the people who missed this.
Yeah, I'll talk state. Tasmania is my most favorite at this point, followed by
I
Victoria.
mean, like Tasmania, which is the favorite, and let's do that each for
Um,
each state.
anything around Launceston, I'll buy in a heartbeat at this point. Even if
Okay.
it needs work, whatever, I'll buy. I'll buy because when the market moves, they say a rising tide lifts all boats. And now the point is when the tide fades away, you know who's swimming naked. So it's both things are true, but I will buy anything in a heartbeat. Devonport, Burnie. The Devonport's costly, so Burnie, Georgetown, Latrobe. We are identifying more markets there, but that's pretty much I think what the crux of Hobart would be.
Okay. Now, if you want to do this, or we can just move to the next part, which is like what to avoid now, because we also want to make
Yes.
sure that people don't buy in the wrong locations, all the mistakes that they can make.
Look, I don't think apartments are going anywhere, and that's where I'd like to be very, very cautious and careful. A cheap price tag on the wrong property is not a bargain. It's a longer way to lose money. So you have to be very careful. And these apartments are not going anywhere. You can buy it. Look, if a lower income family, no other option, a single mom, 350, no, not no longer 350, but 450 to 480. Even North Parramatta, there were few apartments. I like those apartments, right? Smaller complexes, you buy it, but then don't buy expecting that they will grow because you don't want to buy in regional markets. I don't think they're going anywhere. Melbourne CBD apartments, they're a pure yield play, but then in last 15 years that I've been looking at, those have actually gone up by hardly 20-30%. Most people have built their portfolios in 5 to 7 years. Off the plan apartments, the biggest mistake, apartments in North Mead, apartments in CBD, apartments in Melbourne, inner ring suburbs of CBD, people have lost money. So high rises, too much stock unless you're buying penthouses. That's a different market. Oversupplied and overpriced house and land packages. Look, I'll give you an example. There is an area called Gisborne in Melbourne, 55 kilometers northwest. You can buy a land for $430,000. I'll get you an amazing 30 square home with all bells and whistles for $420,000. That market is like Glenhaven and Dural of Sydney. So 850 you're all done. The market valuation of that property is 960 to 975. You've made 110 to $120,000 today. I'm not speculating. And the rental is 750-ish a week. So there are places where you can make money, but not necessarily those places are everywhere. So you have to work out your price. You have to work out what the market price is. You have to work out what you lose in that 1 year, what you gain in that 1 year, and then do your numbers.
Okay, so this is
Otherwise,
what we need to avoid. And apartments, new builds, house and land packages, and what else is there on the list?
look, these days, it's not on the list, but commercial properties. I bought a warehouse for $350,000 in Seven Hills. There is a warehouse currently listed in, what was the location? I think Penrith, somewhere around Penrith. It's 6.3% net yield. You can buy it for 450, $60,000, maybe a bit less. But there are those options available. These days, what's happening is that 30 to 70 square meter warehouses are actually gaining traction because people want to park their boats, toys, vintage cars, plumbers and tradies want to park or put their stuff there. So those small unit style warehouses are taking a lot of traction at this point. So, but be careful, look at the demand before looking at something like that. Otherwise, those properties can be 350 to 500-ish, much better than actually going with residential. But you need bigger deposits, you need bigger risk appetite. You have to be careful with that. So yeah, just that's to avoid. That's one to avoid. The second to avoid would be, as I've said, the pure mining towns and one-legged economies. Again, these can be the yield plays depending upon where you are in the journey. And these will also grow in value, but these pure mining economies, a huge mining economy can help you. Port Hedland, people are buying left, right, and center. It has grown in value. Geraldton, it has a little bit more to it, but that's why Geraldton was otherwise in units. And Kalgoorlie, 9% yields. Again, if it's a yield play, you can go ahead and buy. Um, Mount Isa, I've had people who bought block of units there. They don't grow. Cash flow is okay. If you're sitting on heaps of cash, you're chasing cash flow, not bad markets. If you're chasing growth, you're in very early phases of your journey. I'd say you be careful. Um, yeah, just when a town has one mine and one employer, the yield is danger money. It's not income. You're basically gambling. All right, I'm done with the what to avoid as well. Um, I'd love to present a case study. The pictures are from somewhere else, but I've been working with a client since 2018 and buying a home in the Ponds for 865, currently valued at 1.7. Then buying a property in Victoria for 510. It's Victoria, even after the downturn, the property has grown by 40% in last 6 years. It's not enough, I understand, but then the downturn's gone already. And this is 55 kilometers from Victoria. The rental is 610 a week. Second one in SA, this was bought in Eldinka Beach. Fairly newish property, 515. He's selling and he's got a valuation of 870 to 880. I've been a bit conservative. Then I bought
Hmm.
in Townsville for him, a dual occupancy. So I go to regionals to chase yields, right? So, and the property is now worth 800. It has not only just doubled in value, but it's now giving 830 a week in rent because of its duplex. And finally, now we've bought one property in Victoria again for 642. It's settled last month. We bought it really well off market divorce sale. It's already gone up by about 40,000. This is in Bendigo. So again, I'm revealing locations as well, but this was bought in SMSF. So that's pretty much it. I think I'm ready to take questions.
Let's do the question. We have a lot of questions. A lot of them are repeats. So I'm just going to start from the ones which are not repeated, and then we can just cover a few of those. And you can still ask as many questions as you like, everyone. So the
Yeah.
first one, thank you for your webinar today. My two questions are: please be clear of the states, suburbs, which we did. Second one, talk about the real estate industry going to the post this world turmoil, especially people with two properties only. So I think it's a like two-parted question, like what's going to happen with the world, which again, there are like Professor Jiang is the one who can answer that question better than us. But with the people with two properties only, what is going to happen for that? I mean, you still have two properties. If you can buy more, I mean, obviously you should be looking into that. A lot of things are happening. Capital gains tax discount might be discounted. That discount might be reduced. Negative gearing might also be changing. So there is a little window where you can still capitalize and buy properties. But if you are not able, that's not the end of the world. You are still like the real estate market has always boomed within like some small exceptions. But in Australia, I don't think we have had these issues at all. We are very far from the world turmoil. So in this location, we are very lucky to be in this country, which sometimes we forget. But again, this is, I think, my answer to that question, that you'll still be fine. If you're not able to buy, that's fine. You still have two, which are going to keep growing at the rate of 7 to 8%, which is the national average. And then you're still going to get rental incomes from them. But that's my two bits on this, Ashish. What do you?
Look, this is why I covered the growth chart. So the growth may slow down. Some markets may drop, but the worst drops we've seen were around 5 to 7% for only 1 or 2 years in last 15, 30-year horizon. Um, the point here is let's take a contrarian view. Negative gearing is abolished or limited to two properties, but it's grandfathered as well, right? So people who are holding already four or five, they will get the gearing, or if not gearing, sorry, the grandfathered was CGT. So
Like we are not sure. Maybe negative gearing will be the same. Maybe they will restrict to two properties for new developments. I'm
yeah,
not sure
so
what's going to happen.
the
It's all
point
speculative.
is, yeah, absolutely. So we are unsure what's going to happen, but even for two properties, I reckon it's fine. People are already chasing yields and cash flow positive properties. So there are options. We have now changed our strategies as well, where we're not getting too many negative properties for clients, especially if it goes beyond two. Now with world turmoil, look, I'm not sure how the war ends, what will happen. Australia is somewhat a secluded economy, so I won't take a too bright outlook there. But with just two properties,
Property
I don't
people,
think you
well,
should be
like, if
worried.
we just say that nothing is going to happen, it's going to be fine. It's going to be like be like a salesy, like we are trying to sell properties, which we don't. That is honestly our view that these things might not change as much as you think. We thought COVID might stop people like from buying properties. What we saw was phenomenal growth since then, and this was an opportunity. That's what I look it as.
Yeah, so I think that this is the other point. A lot of clients are now approaching me seeing an opportunity in the market, right? Because, and also, like we discussed, markets like Tasmania, they're not slowing down. So if the market hasn't seen any growth in last 3 years, why would you feel that market has further downside? When I bought in Victoria in October 2024, I was telling my clients the markets may fall by 5%. You should be prepared. The markets actually, that was the bottom of the market. And by the time the stats are out, it's generally 6 to 12 months late. Anyway, so let's move on to the next question.
Now, from Victoria, you mentioned there's another few versions of this question. What about Melbourne? Melbourne's units, 550. Where to buy around Melbourne for 550? What do you think about that? Is it recommended? And that should also cover the questions about Tani, because we have like six different questions about Tani at different locations. So let's get into that, Ashish. What do you think?
All right, Melbourne recommended. Look, I've already covered. I believe in Melbourne. I've seen the growth for at least last 12, 15 years. I've closely tracked markets for 30 years. I definitely feel it's a good market, and it's been a strong performer as well. The thing is, you have to be careful with oversupplied locations, right? So Melbourne recommended's done. Where is Thaneet? All right,
We have
what
few
did you
different
say
versions
about
of the
that
same
place?
question. If you just keep scrolling, I what about Tani? What do you think about that place? I don't think much about that place. If you think about it, Ashish, let us know.
Look,
Tani, Melton, what's happening there?
yeah, I've never bought in Thai. Honestly, my personal point of view, I'll leave that aside. But I've not bought for clients. I will also not buy for clients. I feel it's actually a white collar demographic. It's not bad, but over a period of time, I believe the demographics have gone a little bit poorer. And then the supply is another constraints and issues. So Thane, Wyndham Vale, Manor Lakes, Membrane, Caroline Springs is okay, but Thane, no, just I would avoid. I'm sorry, I'm saying it this way. I've got a
On
client
the
who
same
owns.
lines, there is another question about units in Victoria around Neat or Clayton. What would you say? Will units price grow in those locations?
Sorry, where?
If you just keep scrolling in that, there is a question about you buying units in Victoria around Tarnit or Clayton. Just so many about Tarnit Clay. We should
Someone
there's a question
really is
about
in love with
Tarnit.
Thane. I'm telling you, just exit that market now. Look,
This oversupply is what
unit.
I hear from others.
I've answered Tanit. I will not even buy a house, leave alone a unit. Look, the best suburb that comes in that pocket is Werribee, but because of the oversupply, I'm a bit cautious in Werribee as well. Why don't you go to Geelong? Like I don't know why people are stuck in that 35 to 50-kilometer radius. Because I'm telling you, in Melbourne, in western pockets, the actual good suburbs start at 50 kilometers and beyond. So Torquay, for example. Bannockburn, it's okay market, but there's a little bit of supply. Colac, I told you, Colac's really cheap market. It's much better. There's an amazing lake in Colac as well. I've driven in not all, but I'd say 7 or 8 markets of every 10 markets that I've given. I've got a teammate who's pretty much gone in every regional area. He enjoys travel, and recently he did a trip to Tasmania. He went to Whyalla, Port Pirie, and everywhere else. Just we get a good insight. But anyways, coming back, so units, I'm not sure why would you buy units in villa style properties. You can have a look. Small townhouses, you can have a look. And this is where, like, I bought a property for 230 on 237 square meter land. I bought for clients on 220 square meter land. I think it's a very wrong mentality to think that buy units. Like you can buy smaller properties like that. We bought something in Wallert on 220 square meter land, corner block though, so 3 sides open for 520 or 550. It's renting for 550, 560 a week. That's 5% yield on a property that's named as a villa. It's Torrens title, independent property on 220 square meters. So that's why sometimes you just shift your mindset a little bit to see what type of assets can work in value. I get this a lot. I want a big land and a big decent house on it, and my budget is 450. Now guess where you're going? You're going outwards. Because in city, if you want to stick to good quality locations, you pay a good quality price. If you want to go near to the water, you pay for the location. And that's where sometimes the mindset has to be a little bit different. Like my 237 square meter property in Geelong, I've just sold it. Bought for $275,000 in 2016, 17. Sold last to last month for $585,000. Now, I would have actually held that property, but my money is stuck in developments. We're building a childcare, we're building a
There's another question
warehouse.
about the same market, which is slightly different, which says that what's wrong with Melbourne market? And I don't know where to start with, but would you be able to answer these questions? Like what's wrong with Melbourne market? Not these specific locations, but in general, like when you initially mentioned it's not landlord friendly, land tax, blah, blah, blah. Can you just like briefly answer that again? Because I think it's quite important to discuss that. I, by
Look,
mistake, put it in answer section, but
I
this is
believe
not answered yet.
there's a lot of small things that have added up. Number one, the migration. So when Melbourne peaked out, a lot of people moved from Melbourne and Sydney into areas like Queensland and Perth. At this point, you can buy much better property in Melbourne within 40, 50 kilometers than even in Perth, for example. So it will take some time for that mindset shift. Melbourne is cheap, and because of that outwards migration, the vacancy rates in many pockets have gone up, and then the supply is in abundance. So it and what happens at the peak of every cycle is people start to move outwards because they see more value in other areas, and at the bottom of the cycle, people start to see value in those states. And then comes the government's constraints and conditions. They also, at one point, I forgot the name of the guy who was managing, but he also said the the government is under administration or something, and they didn't had money, and then the land tax and everything else to recoup the COVID losses. So I think everything is adding up to the issues in Melbourne. But again,
My logic and
look,
my answer to be would be like very like numbers based that it's not enough return of investment for me. Rental yield is low, land tax may be higher. There are so many issues with it. Like if the tenant doesn't go, despite we know that it's very like crime rate is a little bit going up in Melbourne. So if we get a bad tenant, it can cost you a lot because the rules are totally against the landlords. We get is so much in favor of the tenants over there that if you one get one bad tenant, you are screwed for a long time. Your cash flow is affected in that. So purely numbers wise, it doesn't make sense for me. I can get similar property in a different, like let's say Adelaide. It's a capital market, lesser and lower than at lower price point than Melbourne. Much safer, similar capital growth or higher capital, way higher capital growth in my opinion, and very decent rental yields. So why would I buy in Melbourne if there are better options available? Why buy in Melbourne if there are better regional options available with better rental yields?
true, I agree. And just as an example, we bought a unit, and this was Perth was just growing, and we picked Bunbury as a location because of the way it was growing. I bought a unit, a small three complex strata. Strata was $400 a year. We bought it for I think 380, 370 under super in super of a colleague, ex-colleague. That property is today 680, and that 400 strata is a year is nothing. So someone asked as well, like, what about strata rates for the location where unit buying is recommended in
Yeah.
different states? Look, I generally you work out your costs, but more importantly, you also see why the strata is there. If it's a 4 to 8 unit block, a strata is okay for common areas. But if there's swimming pool, there's now you add apartments and lifts and all of that. At certain point, you will pay for in the sinking funds, or you will pay for repairs. So that also you have to be cautious. Like how old is the block? When is the next repair due? Are you looking at the AGMs, which is your annual general meeting, minutes of meeting of the AGMs? You have to be really cautious and careful with strata units, but older strata, smaller blocks generally are okay. I'd say anywhere between 400 to $1,000, 1,200 maybe, but that's where a year, not a quarter. So that's where I'll draw a line. But otherwise, it's not worth paying any more than
One for
1,200 to
Kennedy.
1,500 a year.
Here is a question by Carradine. I want to help to buy before the suburb had passed 500,000. This is irrelevant, she said. The whole thing. If the market suburb has booked already. I'm not sure what it means by booked already, or like 500,000. I mean, we still covered a lot of different locations for 500 to 550, which are still in that price point. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, maybe just, rewatch this. We will send a video again, but there are still locations which we covered, which are still in that price point, 500, 550 price points. So you just need to find those locations and they may not be around for
Yeah. So that's, I think most locations you can still buy now. I don't think you have to wait. But then again, just be careful. Just do some basic research, basic supply. You should look because I in some cases I've mentioned a suburb, but then those pockets are performing really well. Now, as an example, again, if you are still looking at Gold Coast in Queensland, I believe you again the market has more than doubled, right? So 2023 we exited Gold Coast and we actually moved into the western precincts towards Toowoomba, Lockyer Valley. I skipped Ipswich because to me demographic is really important. So my clients look in a very similar mindset. So, but those markets have also now doubled or at least gone 70, 80% just in last 2 years. So
yeah.
how about we then look at which markets have not grown and then start to look at those markets again? And that's what
Mhm.
counts. Like when you're in the market, you look at everything holistically. So, all
His
right.
next question is, do you know anything about invariant
In
softwares?
I haven't looked at that either, but I can give some stats. Let's pick that up in maybe 5 minutes. I can look at some
Let's just
stats.
do a quick one because we have like 30, 40 different questions and more and more coming in. We
All
will
right.
just
So let's say
then my
as
battery
we
is also
currently
dying.
focused on entry point strategy, it's equally important to define an exit strategy. If you engage BA services from Ashish, would you also be open to working with us on developing the exit strategy? Look, exit strategy is developed. You can't develop an exit strategy initially. There is a strategy, a blueprint in mind, but then things can change over a period of time. Like my clients, they've been buying properties thinking that, we're holding for 10 or 15 years, but now it's been 8 years. And to sell those property actually makes sense. We bought a property in Baldivis for a client. for 565. He's selling it for $950,000. So with that money, he can not only just buy two properties, but he can also now pay off the loan of his home. And that's what counts, right? Because that was the goal, to pay off the home loan first. And then the property in Adelaide also bought for around 420, has grown to about 800 something. So there's money in both properties, but then it's better to hold one and then sell the other one. And which one to sell? Yes, I've been constantly in touch. We can have a strategy again and again every year. That's what I do for clients. But then it's better to listen to someone who knows. So have that one person working with you, either your buyer's agent or someone who knows the property and they are in the market all the time. Otherwise, there's a point of view from everyone, and that's what confuses people.
Yeah, like define your
Awesome.
goals. I would say that, what's your goal? You want to retire early, you want financial freedom, you want to pay off your mortgage. What is the first goal? What's first? And then just go from there and just do the reverse calculation for if you need 200,000 as an annual salary when you retire. If that's your goal, just work out what the amount of properties you need, what's your net worth, which you will have, which you can just, or how many properties you need to get the rental income. So just, yeah, work out that end goal and then go from there.
Yep, absolutely. Now, Dax asks, on an average, what percentage can we expect state-wise and then overall, one on unit buying and then the house buying? That's a good question, Dax. There's generally a percentage in a suburb for units versus houses. But how many units are being bought versus how many houses are being bought? Honestly, I haven't looked at that, but eventually what happens is you can pick as the unit buying is happening or picking up in a suburb, those stats are available. But the other thing is most people only look at house stats, not unit stats. And when the markets are peaking out or the other properties are now getting costlier, it actually may make sense to look at units as well, especially townhouses like Craigieburn, 420K, there's still townhouses available, two bedroom. They're renting for 470, 80 a week. But don't buy brand new because there's 30, 40,000 commissions in it. In order to recoup those costs, it will take you a good 1 or 2 years.
1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. What percentage growth you follow?
So 1 year should be 10% or less generally, or 10% or more. And that's what tells you that the market is now growing. 3 years, it should be 30, 40%, but less than 50, which means there's still room to move in the market. 5 years, if it's 50 to 70%, that tells you the market has moved. It's time for me to come out. The 10-year growth can be clubbed with 1 and 3 year horizon. Let's say, for example, in Melbourne, the 10-year growth is 94%. The 3 year growth is negative. The 1 year growth is about 9%. To me, that market has started to move, right? So that you have to, every stat has to be looked in conjunction. If I tell you the supply is, like people tell me that the supply is 7% in an area, which means the 7% stock may hit the market of the total number of dwellings, which is considered more. But if the number of sales is such that your stock levels will deplete in about 6 months' time, it's a good market to be in. So the stats are never seen in exclusivity, they're seen in conjunction with some other numbers also. So to your point. But no, good question.
Please advise on Brisbane since game's coming.
Brisbane, look at Bundaberg, but the entry point is 750 to 800. There's nothing for 550. I'm sorry. You have to spend 750 to 800. Bundaberg, Lockyer Valley, still options available. Duplexes for 600 to 650 you can enter still. There's some options available. And I'm not a big fan of going to Mackay and Townsville at this point. It has grown substantially. So I'd rather be next to Brisbane than actually move on. And by the way, 9 of 10 countries, and this is Matusik stat, 9 of 10 countries are in deficit after Olympic Games. And you know what? If the market would have grown substantially, Olympic Park hosted games back in 2000. Why are Auburn and Lidcombe? Lidcombe is costly. Why is Auburn and Granville still cheap? So you have to be cautious and careful because once the games happen, afterwards, all of that infrastructure just would not create too many jobs, and it's existing infrastructure that they're upgrading, and it's staggered across Queensland. So just be careful not have too many hopes on Olympics. A little bit is fine.
Now I wish to know, is it good to buy a unit in Sydney or buy a house in Melbourne? So very like like you need to have give more specifics about where, what price point, and that's when I think it will be a better answer, because Sydney some units may outperform Melbourne's houses. In general, houses would be better, I would say.
If we have to generalize, then yes, house in Melbourne. But then again, if it's an investment, why can't we look at Tasmania? Like good markets again. But if we have, it has to be Melbourne. It has to be Melbourne. I bought in Melbourne in September last year for 625. It's valued at 680 already. It's also in second property in my SMS.
Which part while I say would be in high growth? Newry, Stewart, Barson, Jenkins, Playford. I think everything is good.
I think Viola Playford, Viola Jenkins is what I like. By the way, those suburbs are very interesting. They prefix with Viola. Viola Playford, Viola Jenkins, Viola Nuri, Viola Stewart.
Violet, Ori, Violet,
Yeah. So Jenkins and Playford, have a look at that. Anything around the train yard, just be careful. But just once one market is moving, the other markets will move. There won't be a substantial difference between two pockets right next to each other.
Impact to market with any future interest rates and policy changes affecting real estate market. Your take on it? It's everything is going to be speculation. There is no one who can exactly tell you what's going to happen, but the shortage is the main thing. Like right now, shortage is what's driving the market, and that's not going anywhere. Immigration is what's driving the economy, and the people are coming in, so they are going to need houses. These policy changes, it's just going to make that instead of like 100,000 capital growth after CGT, you might be making 95,000, 90,000. So it's just a little bit less money you're making, but you're still making money. So people are gonna keep buying these properties, and I don't think anything is gonna change. I do keep a track of all the markers, like what's happened with the delinquency rate, what's happening with these things, and unless there are specific markers of immigration going down, you are fine. There is nothing, no change I foresee in the market for the next 2, 3, 5 years at least.
Yeah, I think you've picked the crux, identifying the right markets to invest, and you just can't go wrong. Since 2020, there's been a positive outlook and there's been a negative outlook on the market. I've had clients who are sitting since 2021, 2022, because they've always been looking at the negative outlook. And since then, I've been buying a property every year. I've just been looking at the tighter markets every time, and people have made money through that. So there's also an article that I wrote around 2 years back where interest rates and property prices has some relevance, but not an entire relevance. And that's where, I would have loved to then add an interest rate chart with the chart that I've shown, because some of the markets are performing irrespective of how interest rates are. And that's where the affordability comes
The
in.
questions that keep coming in, my battery is dying. I might need to bring the charger. Ashish, can you take the next 2 or 3? I'll just bring my charger in.
Yeah, okay, done. How to understand if a market has oversupply or an undersupply? Look, there are factors that you need to consider from a demand perspective and a supply perspective. Supply comes with the number of houses in that market, what is on market, it's called stock on market, and also what is hitting that market, which means you can actually go and calculate the council approvals in past 18 months. But that's not just for that suburb. You have to look at for the entire statistical area 4. So the ABS does not measures the stats with council and suburbs. It measures with statistical area 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it has to be measured in statistical area 4, which let's say somewhat comparable to council, right? And that's what tells you about the supply. Now comes the undersupply comes when the demand is more. And how would you see the demand? Where the days on market of the property, they keep getting reduced, where the number of sales is going up, and number of sales is not given in any portal as such. So I pick that up sometimes. I used to pick up from hotspotting, and now I think Hashtag adds it. But if the number of sales are improving, and now you have to calculate the yearly sales and then see what the stock was there, how much time it will take for that stock to sell on market, and that's called inventory. So inventory less than 6 to 9 months is amazing. Anything beyond that, you have to be careful and cautious. And now comes the demand. Now, back in 2018-19, Craigieburn was listed, Cranbourne was listed, and Geelong, Armstrong Creek. they were the top 5 suburbs where most migrants were moving in. And I think the number was 1,800 a month. So when you see that sort of movement, and then comes Craigieburn at this point it's a huge suburb, I think 13,000 something dwellings, but the supply is always low. There's no infill land, sorry, there's no greenfield land there. There's no estate. It's all fully developed. But then the vacancy rates are high because there's a lot of investors in there as well. However, that market is good. When you go one suburb out, there are people giving scores of 7 or 8 to Craigieburn and 2 to the next door suburb. There are risks that you have to onboard in the next door suburb where there's a little bit of supply and more vacancy rates. But it will never happen that this suburb doubles in value and this suburb stays there. If worst, it'll grow by 70-80% if the fundamentals are correct. So that's, I like to call a spillover, which happens from Ponds to Schofields, which happens from Craigieburn's now full, so it'll happen to Mickleham, but Mickleham is a little bit risky suburb. So you see the budget and risk appetite. But so look, it's a lot. What I can suggest is look at hashtag, look at DSR, look at uh, Matusik, understand these stats, because if you are just following your gut, you rather gamble the money, not invest. So all right, it's done. I'll move on to the next one. Townsville property continue to hold. Look, it depends. What I would look at is how many properties you hold, what sort of rental it's getting you, what sort of growth have you got, how much debt you are holding, and what is your 5, 10, and 15-year goal. And if the answer comes that you don't mind if the market stagnates for a little while, then yes, hold it. But if the answer comes that you are onboarded a little bit, or your exposure to risk now is more, debt levels are more, you hold multiple properties, and that's where you can take a call to sell it and then move the money into other properties. And that's sometimes where we are so much stuck that we'd like to hold the property because of whatever reasons. Sometimes it doesn't go well. So just don't put anything too hard. It's an investment at the end of the day. And if it gives you peace to pay off your home loan first, do that. Moving to the next one, why not Broadmeadows? I've seen some good deals under 650. So by the way, we were talking 550. Broadmeadows is an okay market. It's actually a good market with an exception of some demographic aspects here and there. But if otherwise, it's a good market to be in, but not at 550 anymore. Move on to the next one from Professor Good. So with this possible change in CGT and negative gearing, do you also think people will hold for longer to use equity to buy rather sell? So I definitely think people are going to hold. But look, if I've made $300,000 and I have to give the government back 120 out of it, and I can make better use of my money, I would do it. Now, with the CGT going less, I believe there was a reason why people never bought a property in a company name. And actually, company lets you claim a lot of things, but it doesn't let you claim the CGT. Now, if the CGT is abolished or coming to that 33%,
No
right, which
finance
means,
advice.
sorry?
No finance advice. There's a disclaimer.
Absolutely.
Disclaimer to everyone.
I think people will go with different structures now, right? So it may actually work out in benefit of a lot of people. I'm doing developments. If I'm making $1 million, would I mind paying back the government for 50 or whatever? But there are ways I can further safeguard on tax. So again, there's no tax advice, but I reckon there's way more. And then, okay, who will see a loss? As I've said, there's a huge wealth transfer happening at this point. There's the highest number of baby boomers that are about to retire. Where would that wealth go? It'll come back to their kids, right? Why are we doing what we're doing? Of course, we want to safeguard our interests, but we do for kids. 9 times of 10, I'll hear, it's for my kids, right? So now think all these taxes and everything. If you give $2 million property and the government decides for that transfer, someone needs to pay stamp duty and the taxes, do you think that liability someone can afford if they're not keeping up with the income? No. That's where income becomes sometimes very important. So
also, to answer the question about should you hold longer, are people going to do that? Look, there are multiple speculations. One of them is that it will be indexed. Like if your inflation is going up, that will also affect the capital growth, which means you will be paying less. Like even the discount is, let's say, reduced to 33%. So if you do the calculations actually and see that annual growth is 7% of property each year, you will see that the longer you hold, the less CGT you pay after selling. So this can be a big factor in that, but depends on the numbers. And after 15 years is when you start seeing some difference. Like after 15 years, you see that maybe 10, 11, 15,000 if your property has doubled up, depending again on the purchase price. But I'm going by a figure of 1 million, and if it double up by to 2 mils and you held for 15 years, so it went up to 2 by 3. If you do the proper calculations by 7% annual growth each year, you will see that if the indexation came to the picture, you may not see that big of a difference. But still, the longer you hold, that's when you'll start seeing a little bit of difference. And these are actual calculations which I've done, not just pulling out of my ass. It's just like I was sat through, did the calculation and see like, oh yeah, this is when the actual changes happen. But to your answer, probably holding longer would be the play. But if you can sell it, pay a little bit more, and then make more money else somewhere else, it's business. It's all about numbers. It's all about where you get the most money. It's not about one that fits all, one strategy that fits all in this.
I think there's something else happening in the background as well. There's a lot of social housing companies now acquiring land. There's billions of funding that's getting approved every second year. I reckon there's something to do with it, but again, I won't go into controversy
Mhm.
theories. But
Yeah.
reducing the investors actually impacts. Look, I'm a rent investor, right? So I'm renting someone else's property. If they don't see value in holding these properties, like where would we find the rentals? Deterring the landlords or the rent investors or investors, I reckon will eventually just bite back. Because in most markets, we only see 30% or less investors mostly, generally.
By the way, thanks to everyone who is still staying. Nobody has left. Maybe like a few people have left, but everyone is still there. Let's just cover up the next question.
Awesome. Yeah. So land sizes in broad meadows are decent, which can be subdivided for secondary dwelling. Yes, I won't go into development, but don't hold the land for the sake of holding for 10 or 15 years. You're much better off buying smaller dwellings and just making the best out of it. If you're doing development like we do, make 20-30% from day one, do the development, move out within 1 or 2 years, your cash on cash return improves to 70 to 80%. And that is a teaser. If someone wants to make that 75-80%, come talk to me. We've got an investment in next 2.5 years. You're walking away $800,000 on $1 million invested. Anyways, moving on. Important question, and it should relate to everyone. What is your BA fees and special fees offer for tonight's attendees? All right, look, I
After giving all the suburbs for free, what else can you give?
exactly. So, look, I do apologize. I haven't given a thought around it. I don't discount my fee either. Someone asks out of respect, I will definitely consider. If someone is interested, they come back, mention this webinar, and I can consider a
So
small
let's do
discount.
something. If you can, Ashish, let's just do something for the people who have just registered, and then we can send a discount code or
I
something.
will. Okay, yeah, I will send an email, Rahul. I think that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, because a lot of like people have spent time for this. They have taken 2 hours, 3 hours of their lives. People from the Facebook group, your groups, everywhere, like they have come. So let's just give them a little bit of
All right, I
uh
respect that. So good question, and I'll make sure I offer a small discount.
thank you,
Definitely.
Ashish.
So
My
Shruti
services are
asks,
also there for free, by the way. If anyone wants a mortgage broker, just a heads up, I do it for free.
good on you.
100% offer. Uh,
Yes. All right. Shruti asked, with regard to buying a unit in Sydney or a house in Melbourne, first house is what I'm asking about. First house, one needs to move into the area in order to claim the grants and all. I've been a rent investor from day one. I haven't bothered claiming the grants or stamps, which is what, 20, $30,000. Moving alone
family
will
requirement.
cost
If
you
it's
way
going to be
more.
an owner occupier, what I see from all the clients, because I deal with owner occupiers, first home buyers, investors, if you are looking from the perspective of not capital growth, what's easy for my family, what's going to be good, if it's closer to schools, if it's closer to the other amenities, your work, these all are the considerations then I mean, you kind of like neglect the capital growth if you go for a unit. You have to forego that. But if you're happy to do investing like I do, like Ashish does, and like a lot of people do, you can live in a comfortable situation where it suits your lifestyle and you buy an investment property which is doubling up in every 4, 5, 6 years. So that's what the strategy should be. But again, I can't speak for what your family needs, what your children, if you have children, if they want something, you want stability, you don't want to keep changing, you don't want to paying rent. Again, like so many factors are there, but it comes down to your individual decision. If you ask us, we are investors. We live by that, like live in this place and we continue buying properties and this works for us.
We've got Vajinder who's raised his hand. Vajinder, I'll
It
if
was raised his hand quite a few times and then I had someone else, Jay, as well.
I can click on.
Maybe it's
Oh,
my mistake.
okay, maybe. All right. So, how about South Coast like Nowra and Central Coast? Look again, very good markets. I love those markets. We have bought in Central Coast recently. We're looking for clients as well. But your price point goes from starting 870, 880 for a really old home, bigger lots, of course, where you can build grannies, going up till about 1,050,000 to 1.1 for dual occupancies. Now that's entry, by the way, both in Central Coast and going towards Hunter Valley as well. Hunter Valley, you can find some newer homes comparatively. Newcastle, again, we've just offered a client a service where we found a house for them for, I think, 880, where now we are working with a builder to get all the approvals sorted. So it's a full service that we're providing. Again, we're charging a bit more than our fee, what we generally charge as well. Why? Because that service is getting the DAs and everything else, working with different consultants. It's add a lot of work over the next 1 year after the purchase as well. But this client is looking to achieve 5.2 to 5.5% yield in Sydney on a price point of about, let's say, 1.1 million. So yeah, that's yes, they're good markets. Now, Ashish, you forgot to answer the question related to your fee. Look, I said I am happy to provide a discount. If you're asking what I charge, I generally our fee is tiered. Anything up to 1.5 million is fairly fixed. We start at $16,000, bring it down to 14 and 13 respectively. Any commercial property is again fixed fee of 16. Anything beyond $1.5 million, commercial is 1.5%, residential is 1.2%. I've just signed up today a client in Bella Vista for about $4 million purchase. I've actually charged 1.2%. So development size 3 to 5% because I'm providing better value there. So again, keeping it very transparent. Sumit, thanks a lot for organizing the event. You briefly mentioned Raysonville. What do you think about a lot of new land available for development, quite few new house and land packages? Do you think there is oversupply there and should be rather avoid? Absolutely not. I love Raysonville. Um, this is where you should know that's the only area where there's minor supply. There's nothing else in the surrounds, and it's very hard to find land even in Tasmania. Look, we do developments, we do land subdivision. So I'm looking at land everywhere. I've got now requirements, people asking for development sites, like anywhere from 2 to 25 lots. And it's not easy, by the way. In order to take an approval and get the first lot to market, it takes 2 to 3 years. Then to develop one, you have to put services in. It costs you $80,000 to about $150,000 per lot to put services. So 10 lots would mean almost $1 million to 1.5 million that you have to spend to bring those services. It's not easy. So it's like that supply. A lot of empty land, people confuse it with supply. That's not supply. That's just empty rural zoned land where you can build one home. Supply is where it's R2 zoned and like in Dubbo, R2 zoned and you can subdivide into a lot of lots. That's where we'll see supply. All right. So Pat says, I can't see anything under 515 Launceston. No, you'll see in Georgetown, Latrobe, you'll see in Burnie, Devonport, and you need to open up more markets. Pat, if it would have been so easy, everyone would have been doing it. All right. So, how do you want to take the next one?
First investment property Viswa has said in SMSF. Viswa, we did a proper webinar on SMSF, what sort of properties to buy, what to avoid, everything. It was a masterclass on SMSF. You should check that out. It's just on the Fin Matters channel as well. I think on Auswide's channel, YouTube channel as well. You can go to the YouTube, just search our names and then find SMSF masterclass. You will find the video. We have it's a criteria of it's not a number one location. It's just a criteria of properties that should be playing in SMSF. Again, Ashish can cover that more if he wants to answer the question about the number one location.
Look, I think we've covered the markets. We don't know the price point. Commercial, residential, the more premium properties and suburbs are, again, I've covered a little bit, but there's a lot to consider. So we'd rather just move on to the next question. I do apologize for that.
All good. So these are done. And then we have, would it be better to start planning and building our primary home while continuing to live in our current house, or should we buy a better established home instead. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each option? Ashish, I'll let you take that one. Too long for me to answer.
Look, I think, Rahul, there are two parts to it. I'll cover from a property perspective, but while someone is in their home and they look to build a new home, can you cover from a finance perspective? Because I know there's a bit of moving parts there as well.
So yeah, I'm not sure if they mentioned current house. Do they own a mortgage on this? Because I don't know this financials. But if you already own a mortgage and your borrowing capacity allows you to buy a second house, you can do that. If it allows you to like make one of them investment properties and then make the new one owner occupier, you can do that. Otherwise, there are options like bridging loans. Like if you want to sell this one but don't want to sell it unless that's built, we can do a bridging loan option for you where you buy the other property, still hold this, live in this. When it's built, you move into that, and then you just sell the current one. So a lot of different factors are there how you can like practically make this happen. But again, like from should you build, should you buy an established, so many different variants to that. Again, Ashish will cover that better than I will. So Ashish, if you can
Look,
please.
I'm generally a value type person, so if I'm making more money in building it, like let's say you're moving from Ponds to Castle Hill, for example, and in Castle Hill you found a land, lucky enough to found a land, 700 square meters for 1.6 to 1.8 mil. You build a house for $1 million. The market valuation will be about 3.2 to 3.6 million. So you made a decent $600,000 to $1 million. Building makes more sense. I have a dream. I'll build a home, but I'm going to subdivide a huge site, bring a lot of investors in who want to buy a home. We can make 30% just from day one just by doing that. So if not, and if you're too busy, you're a C-level executive, you're making 350 or $300,000, family income is 350 to 500K, it's not worth your time, right? Because now you're busy doing something and you at a role where you can't afford to take time out or spend that time with the builders doing the stuff, getting sourcing all the items. In that case, just go and buy an established home. And there's a lot to consider, as Rahul has said, but I I am in the industry. I look at value any given day. If you can afford and make that value out of it, well and good. If not, buy an established home. There's something called a bridging loan. I think while you're building or buying, you get a year to sell that and move on and move into the new home.
It should be like owner occupied. If you're building a house, it's like you get custom build, you can make it as your family is. These are the benefits. The disadvantages would be if the build price goes up, like you there could be variations on that, you could be short of that. The build can be delayed. You don't know what's happening, like how delayed this construction can be. And you need a healthy buffer because despite what the builder has given you the contract for, I still see like 7 to 8% more that after the variations that come into the picture after that. Especially like you go to build a Metricon, doesn't matter who the big name is, they all do this. And I see this every day. So if you have a buffer and you want to build a custom home and it suits your family, go for that if you have the funds to complete as well. Next one for you, Ashish. Spelling.
Yes,
This
Spalding is part of Geraldton, so we've covered Geraldton already. Look, the market has grown a fair bit. Just in last 1 year, it has grown 25%. From stats perspective, it does stacks up still, but I would just be worried that I'm buying it at the peak of market. The three-year growth has been 100%. The 10-year growth has been 118%. So most of the growth it has seen in 3 years alone. Anything beyond 50, I'd be very careful, but it's already 100%. So I would avoid that. And there was another suburb called Inverell in New South Wales. I'm actually looking where the market is. I do apologize. I've
Let's
heard the
cover the
name.
last question along with Innervale, and I'll just address everyone. Like, thank you for staying till the end. I really appreciate that. A few hundred of you who registered, attended, and still stay till the end. The energy is like, I can still see the number of people here. Quite impressive. And then this is the last question. We will cover this. Along with this, we will also cover the Innervale question that was asked before. Ashish, on to you.
Look, Tamworth is a good region. We've covered that already. Again, just look, we have to see the population movement, and there's so many other aspects, but otherwise, it's a good region. Armidale and Gunnedah, I feel, are more secluded, more regional pockets. Not that anything bad. Armidale has a big hospital, and I believe there's defense as well.
I bought last month. So
Oh, very nice.
525 income is 550 per day. Capital growth by the time I bought under market, it's already gone up by, if I do the valuations now, I'm getting valuations of 600, but I'm being realistic when saying that it's 560, 570 in like I bought this contract was signed 4 5 months ago, settled month ago. So in 4 5 months, it has done that. So again, be a little bit careful. It's a good location. I am I'm invested now, so I'll say that.
Good. So look, maybe I'm not the right person to ask on Armidale. Gunnedah, I remember a commercial deal that I was apprised of where during the COVID, a Westpac building in the town was sold around 1.2 million with an 8% net yield. That was an amazing deal with a 12-year lease remaining of the 20-year period. So these are smaller towns. I would be careful, especially Gunnedah. As I've said, I'm maybe not about
I agree.
Armidale, but Gunnedah, I've researched a bit. It's a very small town. I'm generally very careful if the population is less than 20,000.
What's the driving growth factor for Guneda? That's what you need to see. I was looking into the same. I couldn't find any growth aspect in Guneda, such a regional small town. Again, maybe because of affordability, people will buy there. But are there any fundamentals? Probably not. So I just dropped the idea of Guneda myself, and I'm talking from experience. I dropped out from Tamworth because community housing, a lot of crime area, and rents are a little bit lower to my taste. And Amidel is my perfect solution. I just bought that. I'm happy with this. Again, you need to do your own research. I'm a property person. I'm speaking as an investor. I'm a finance guy. He is the one who does the research. So go by what he says. I would listen to him. Then I listen to my wife.
Look, Armidale is actually not looking like a bad location. 24,000 population, 1 year growth above 10%, 3 year at 18%, 5 year at 60%. So yes, those are indicators that, there might be another short run coming. Coming to stock levels and building approvals, then nothing. Like it's pretty tight market at this point. The hold periods are sitting around that 10-year mark, which means people don't sell properties until they're holding for at least 10 years. So it looks like a pretty good market. So, and that's the point. Identifying the warm to hot spots is very difficult. Identifying hot spots, you know those markets are improving, and that's where people are many times very late going to those markets. So sometimes just you have to recognize those patterns. I used to call it intuition, but then one investor corrected me, Ashish, it's pattern recognition that you do. It's no longer intuition because he's been associated with me since 2017. He's seen more than 1.2 million in equity in just four properties. So rather three, no, four properties. So again, the point is understanding what markets are performing where, but or how, but you have to be sometimes very cautious and careful. Once the market has gone, then you are left with a property which you bought at peak, and in the next 5 to 7 years, you're doing nothing. You just rather are taken back.
Two more questions. We thought those are the last, but we have two more.
So Ben asks, how do you see market for the next 2 to 3 years with high interest rates? How much yield should we target as the new loan? The interest rates are 6.2 to 7%. Look, with the inflation high, rates high, ideally you're not making much money, but then your cash is depleted anyway. So, and that's why I've pivoted more towards developments and commercial because the yields are net and 6 to 7%, which means your residential equivalent yields would be 8 to 9%. So how much should you target? I would say you target good markets that are poised for growth. If you can balance the yields, then yes, why not? But 5-ish%, for me, it's 4.5 to 5% is still something that's acceptable, but I will not compromise with growth at any point in time.
But whatever you are seeing, 6.2 to 7%, from the first year, you will not find properties
No.
which are or cash flow positive unless you put a 30-40% deposit, which again doesn't solve the purpose. It is about capital growth. Today, the market is like the markets are going up because of scarcity. So chasing yields is probably not the right approach to this. And yield is going to be less today, but tomorrow prices are going up, so are the rents also going up as well. So in 2, 3, 4 years, you pay a little bit principal back, your rents go up, rates may go down. That's when you start seeing a little bit neutrality in the cash flow, and your like property becomes neutral gear, not positive, maybe positive. But capital growth is what you will get. This 500, 600,000, which we are talking about today, next year will be 60,000 more, 50 by 60,000 more. 10% is very reasonable in these locations. A property worth 550, 500 can go to 600, 700 faster than a 700 property will go to $1 million, 800, 900. That's what we see because the affordability, that's where the demand is also. So you can focus either on the yield and buy commercial where you may not get as good capital growth, or you can look into these high growth areas, which are going to be negatively geared for the first 2, 3 years, and then eventually it catches up to your investment.
Right. All right. So last question. Last question.
Sumit,
Yay.
yay.
Which
For
software are
now,
you using where it shows all the details on a click of button? Yes, it's hashtag for infrastructure. I add hotspotting reports. Then we've got Stash. Actually, we did this in another webinar called How to Become Your Own Buyer's Agent. Rahul, if you remember. I've actually covered
yes,
step-by-step journey on how you can identify markets and how you can identify suburbs. Again, you go to either Fin Matters or Auswide's YouTube channel and pick up from there. But yes, I'm using hashtag. It is on fingertips. We pay about, I think, $23,000 for a year for all softwares. Stash is another software where we can prepare due diligence reports in, I won't say click, but let's say in about 20 minutes. Then Cotality or RP data gives you the valuations and ownerships. We look at public housing from two sources, one Stash and second microburbs. And ownerships are again seen from Stash. So, and then floods looked again at Stash and the council maps. Bushfire also verified from council maps and Stash. Previously, we had Archie Star. Archie Star costed us about, I think, $14,000 a year, but now it's been replaced with Stash. But that's just an extra tip. Awesome, Rahul, over
we
to you.
covered everything. I think we covered everything. My food is on the way, and thank you for attending, everyone. We loved the session. If you like the session as well, please let us know when we post in Facebook groups or our emails. Please reply to us. Let us know that we liked it or not, or if any feedback. We will be in touch shortly. You might get calls from our teams. You might just get emails. So please let us know. And if you need any loans, reach out to me. If Ashish is going to give a discount code as well. So good luck.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you being on the webinar, and I'll see you on the next one. This time we're going to showcase how you can make 75 to 80% returns on cash in about 2 to 3 years. So stay tuned for the next one as well.
See you then. Bye.
Awesome. Take care. Bye bye.